Hey there, this is Joe Town or Joseph, depending on how you know me. Um, I decided to make a series of videos to talk about my stroke and the stroke. I hate to call it my stroke. It's a stroke. I don't want to own that thing. So I thought I'd make a series of videos because I'm not going to be able to see all of you one at a time, and I'm not going to probably be doing any gigs or I'll be out in the world much in the coming months because I'm not ready to do that. But I'm well enough and my speech has improved and I'm functioning better. I have a long way to go still, but I'm doing well. And so I wanted to share the story with you. The sacred stroke, my sacred stroke. And so this is the first video, and this is the question I get a lot of people ask me about, when did I know and where was I? And so I had worked 4 nights in a row playing music, and I had my last gig on a Saturday night at the old club on Harson's Island. And my daughter Heather had come home from California, and I was looking forward to seeing her. But I had worked every night, and she was in town doing what she did, so I didn't get to see her until Sunday. Sunday was going to be a get-together with my girls. And, I had a busy summer. I had the busiest summer since '07, musically. It was really a good summer. But I injured myself in the spring, in May, and I was nursing an abdominal injury most of the summer. So my goal all summer was just to get through the summer. And I'd take care of it. I had talked to a doctor, a DO at my office at the Mind's Eye, Lori Dillard, who's a goddess and a healer and an amazing doctor. And she didn't think I had something seriously wrong, just a strain. So I was careful. But the goal was to get through the summer. That's all I wanted to, get through the summer and take it from there. So I did. So that Sunday morning, I got up around that morning. I didn't get home till probably 3:30 or so, and I didn't get up until about 11:30 or noon. And I felt a little weird, but on Sundays I regularly feel I'm old. And when I work 4 or 5 nights a week and move my crap and set it up and tear it down and spend 4 hours being Joe Town, it's a lot of energy. It takes a lot of energy to do that gig. And I'm thankful I can still do it, or I could still do it at that time. But I just wanted to get through the summer. So that Sunday was the last day of summer, and I had gotten through the summer. And my daughter was in town. Both my girls were in town. I was excited. I was going to see my kids. So I went for a walk, as I usually do. And when I was walking, my legs felt really heavy. My feet, felt heavy. Within about maybe 7-8 minutes into the walk, I felt, and again, on Sundays, I'm tired after I worked all week. I'm tired always on Sundays because I've expended a lot of energy, but it was different. So I decided to head back home, and I went back home, and I picked up my guitar, first thing I did, and I couldn't play. My left hand wasn't working, and I couldn't play. And I was like, uh-oh, this is not good. And as most of you know, I'm an astrologer also, so I looked at my astrology chart for that day. Now, astrologically, every planet means something in your chart. Most of what astrology was for thousands of years was medical. Doctors didn't have MRIs, they didn't have X-rays and CAT scans. They look at your chart and they'd go, this person has a predisposition to certain kinds of things. And they'd look at the transits to your chart, where the planets are today, and that would tell them a lot about the kind of illness you had. And that was high technology for hundreds of years at least, and probably thousands of years, a couple thousand years anyway, since the Greeks, because they knew what they were doing before Jesus was born. So I looked at my chart. Every planet represents a body part. So astrologically, Mars is your head. Mars is the head. So when I looked at my chart, I saw that Mars in the sky was exactly opposite Mars in my chart. They were 180 degrees apart, my progressed Mars. And I knew from the ancient texts I have a library of a couple hundred astrology books, that Mars to Mars is considered a blow to the head, a strike to the head, a wound to the head. It's the head. So I knew when I saw that, like, well, there you go. I've had a stroke. So I called my daughter, Courtney, and we were going to get together, and I said, I think I'm going to drive myself to the urgent care because something's wrong here. And she goes, no, I'm going to come get you, Dad. So she did. We went to urgent care. Within a couple minutes, they said, yes, you are having an acute hypertensive emergency, which means your blood pressure is off the hook. and they rushed me to Beaumont Hospital in Troy here, and I had my, they knew within very quickly that I had a stroke. So both of my daughters were there to get with me, and the brain is a crazy, an amazing thing. And when you're injured, an animal that's hit by a car will have enough adrenaline and life force to crawl away from the accident and find a safe place to hide, to die usually. They find a lot of animals on the side of the road behind bushes or under things because that's what they do. They have enough adrenaline to get to a safe place to die. They think they're going to get better, but of course many of them don't. So I was on adrenaline. I knew I had a stroke. I wasn't dead, and that was really a good thing. And I knew the astrology of the moment I'm in. I knew I was in a cycle, end of a 30-year cycle astrologically that was all of 2019. And I was working with a Jungian analyst, Yvonne Tarnas, amazing psychologist and thinker, about the dreams I was having, the astrology of it, and how I could die to, if I was talking to a client about that 30-year cycle, I'd say, well, how many 30-year cycles will you have? If you live to be 90, you'll have 3, and they don't fall on even years. It begins at a certain point. You have what's called a progressed new moon at a certain point in your life, and then 30 years later, you will have another one. And if you're lucky, you'll have another one. And so I knew I was in the cycle of this death and rebirth, and I knew that there was something in me that was going to die so that something else could emerge. And when you know these things, you have context for your life. That's what astrology helps one do. So I knew I was at the end of a cycle. I knew that something in me was going to die. And when I had that stroke, I knew that was the death. I had the death, and I was not dead, which is great. When death's a metaphor, that's a really good day, okay? And I was alive. So I was high on adrenaline. I was in denial, as most people are. I didn't think the stroke was that bad. I thought I was okay. In fact, I thought they were going to let me go home that night. And my daughters were in the emergency room, and we were laughing and we were carrying on. Heather went and got me some food that I shouldn't have eaten, by the way, because I had a hard time swallowing, and I didn't know that was a dangerous stroke moment. You can choke to death, and you're not supposed to eat right after a stroke. I didn't know that. I didn't see lights and colors. Depending on where in your brain a stroke occurs will determine the kind of stroke you have. I had a real stroke. It wasn't a mini stroke or a TMI. It was a real stroke in a part of the brain on the right side of my brain that has to do with the motor strip, and it had to do with moving and getting around, physical stuff. My left side, whatever side of your brain the stroke is, the other side of your body will have the effect. So my left side was numb. I had a hard time walking. I had a hard time talking. And again, I knew I sounded like the Rain Man that first couple months even, till I got into speech therapy and started working on healing and speaking. But the good news is, where it hit my brain, it didn't take out my linguistic capability, my ability to talk and think and say words. I had difficulty early on doing that. But I knew the day I had it, I knew who I was, I knew what I knew, I could look at an astrology chart and I knew what it meant, so my thinking wasn't broken. My speaking was broken and I couldn't move very well, but I wasn't broken. My mind was still intact and my spirit was strong, and I was ecstatic that I was alive. I hadn't died. So I knew that day I was going to get on with re-emerging. I was going to get on with the resurrection. When you have a 30-year cycle in a sign of Scorpio, no less, death and rebirth is the theme. So I knew I didn't have a real death. It was a metaphor, and that I could emerge now in this new form, whatever that would be. I knew that I couldn't play guitar, and I knew singing was not good. I tried to sing in the hospital when I was alone, and I sucked at it, guitar and vocal. I couldn't play guitar very at all, and I couldn't sing at all. So I thought, well, okay. And I told this to my daughters and to the doctors and to the army of neurologists that I spoke to, when I was at the hospital, that, if I can't play guitar, that'll be sad. And if I can't sing anymore, that would be sad. But I can think, I can write. I couldn't type yet. My left hand wasn't working, but I thought I can write, I can talk. I've been doing talks about all these things I think about, and people come to them. And so I was moving towards doing more of that stuff anyway. So I decided to accept the end, this ending, and say, okay, So if Joe Town's dead, Joseph's going to emerge, and I'm going to be okay because I know who I am, and I am who I thought I was because I'm not depressed or suicidal. I'm going to pivot here and emerge in a better way. And I knew that within the first day. I was in denial the first couple of days about how bad it was because the brain does that, the adrenaline and the different hormones that kick through your brain to survive. But I knew who I was, and I knew I was going to be okay. And that was the beginning of my sacred stroke.
It's like a sad clown smile, like reason gone wild, just like a monkey trial. Yeah, it's like a sad clown smile, like reason gone wild, just like a monkey trial. Well, it's like a sad clown smile, reason gone wild, just like a monkey.